In 1986, a movie threw a Ferrari 250 GT California backwards through a plate glass wall and into a ravine. And nobody at Ferrari cared. Because it wasn't a Ferrari. What Ferrari did care about was the two-man California shop that built it. The fake was so convincing that Ferrari's lawyers came after them, and the legal bills helped finish the company off. Here's the twist 40 years in the making. Today, that dead company's fake Ferrari sells for $350,000. Engineless, undrivable, famous. This is the story of the most valuable kit car ever destroyed on film, and the lawsuit that made it a legend. Welcome back to Real Iron, where we dig into the machines that made the movies, and the stories the movies never told you. Ferris Bueller's Day Off just turned 40. 4 decades of Dankeschön, of parade floats, of Bueller, and one car that upstaged everybody in it. It is his love. It is his passion. Cameron's dad's 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California is one of the rarest Ferraris ever built. Roughly 56 were made, and today, the real ones trade north of $15 million, which is exactly why the car you see in the movie isn't one of them. Over the next 12 minutes, how a two-man shop in a San Diego suburb landed the most famous car roll of the 80s, how they built a car whose entire job was to die on camera, why Ferrari sued them for doing it too well, and how the fake ended up honored on the National Mall and hammering for 6 figures at auction. Stick around, because every act of this story is stranger than the last. Start with the script problem. John Hughes wrote a car that gets thrashed by joyriding valets, launched over a hill in Chicago traffic, run in reverse on a jack in a desperate attempt to roll back the odometer, and finally kicked off its stand and through a glass wall. That is a stunt car's job description, and Hughes wanted it done to one of the most valuable automobiles on Earth. Even in 1986, a real 250 GT California was serious money, hundreds of thousands of dollars and climbing fast, on its way to today's 8-figure prices. Only about 56 were ever built. No insurer was signing off on jumping one, and no studio was buying one to destroy. And here's the detail most retellings skip. The Ferrari almost didn't happen at all. Hughes reportedly had a Mercedes in mind for Cameron's father, until a replica 250 GT in a magazine caught the production's eye. Think about that. The most famous Ferrari in movie history got the part the same way half of Hollywood does. A good headshot. That magazine car led Paramount to Modena Design and Development of El Cajon, California. Basically 2 guys, Neil Glassmoyer and Mark Goyette, hand-building a replica they called the Modena Spyder California. Tube frame, fiberglass body, MG donor components, Ford V8 power. Not a toy, a real running sports car wearing a very famous suit. The story goes that when the studio called, Glassmoyer thought it was a prank and nearly hung up. It wasn't a prank. Paramount leased 1 car and bought 2 more, and the shop's little replica was suddenly cast opposite Matthew Broderick. 3 cars, 3 jobs. Car 1, the running hero car. That's the machine in the parking garage jump, the one actually driving through Chicago. Car 2, a static stand-in for beauty shots and set dressing, because the schedule needed a Ferrari in 2 places at once. Car 3, a lightweight fiberglass shell with no engine at all, built for exactly one scene, its own death. Only the hero car actually ran during filming, and the fakes photographed so well that to this day people argue about whether a real Ferrari snuck into the close-ups. Hold that thought, we'll come back to it. Every great destruction scene is an engineering project, and this one had a budget of exactly 1 car. The shell was the whole plan, light enough to launch cleanly, complete enough to read as a $15 million Ferrari at 24 frames a second. You know the scene. Cameron, catatonic in his dad's pristine glass garage, finally boils over about his father loving the car more than him. He kicks the nose, again and again, then leans on it. The jack lets go, and the Ferrari launches backwards through the glass and into the ravine below. 1 shell, 1 shot, no second chances. It's arguably the emotional climax of the whole movie, and it only works because the thing dying on screen looks absolutely real. And give the hero car its stunt pay too. That parking garage sequence? Two joyriding attendants launching a priceless Ferrari over a Chicago hill? That's the real, running Modena Spyder catching air on camera. A kit car doing stunt work that no studio on Earth would have asked of the genuine article. That's the whole reason these cars existed. Here's the part almost nobody knows. The crash car didn't stay dead. After production, the wreck was rebuilt as a display piece. Straightened, resprayed in that famous red, the vinyl seats reupholstered. They never gave it an engine. It can't drive. It exists purely as the car that died for cinema, which, as we're about to see, turned out to be worth a fortune. So the movie comes out in June of '86, makes $70 million, and every gearhead in America suddenly wants Cameron's dad's car. For a two-man replica shop, that should have been the lottery. Instead, it was the beginning of the end. The problem? The Modena Spyder was too convincing. The movie cars wore Ferrari badges Modena never had the rights to use. After the film hit, Ferrari went after replica builders, and Modena Design was squarely in the crosshairs. To be clear about the legal nuance, this was about trademarks and design, not the movie itself. Ferrari's position, then and now, is simple. Nobody borrows the prancing horse. The suit reportedly settled out of court, with Modena agreeing to make design changes to Ferrari's specifications. On paper, that's survival. In reality, the legal fees had already gutted a company that measured its output in single digits per year. Modena built roughly 50 Spyders between 1985 and 1989, and then it was over. Today, only around 38 are believed to survive. And Modena wasn't alone. This was the mid-'80s replica boom. Fake Daytona Spyders were cruising through Miami Vice on network television, and Ferrari was suing those builders too. Maranello spent the back half of the decade carpet-bombing the American kit car industry with lawyers, and mostly winning. The little shops that made the fakes disappeared one by one. The fakes themselves? Those stuck around, and got famous. Sit with the irony. Ferrari couldn't uncast the car. They couldn't make the movie less beloved. The lawsuit didn't erase the fake, it just made it rare. And in the collector market, rare plus famous is a chemical reaction. Fast forward to the modern auction block, where this story pays off in numbers. The running hero car, the jump car, the one with the Ford V8, crossed the block at Mecum in 2020 and hammered at $396,000. But the one that breaks people's brains is the crash car. No engine, cannot move under its own power. Its entire resume is dying in one scene of one movie 40 years ago. At Heritage Auctions, it sold for $337,500. For that money, you could buy several real classic Ferraris, actual Maranello steel with racing history. Buyers looked at that math and chose the fiberglass shell. And run the 40-year math on the builder's side of the ledger. Modena sold these new for the price of a nice Corvette. The company died broke, buried in legal fees, in 1989. Every dollar of that six-figure appreciation went to collectors, not to the two men whose hands actually built the most famous fake in film history. Because that's the lesson every movie car collector already knows. Provenance beats pedigree. Nobody paid six figures for an MG-based kit car. They paid for the exact object that made a generation of us fall in love with a Ferrari that was never there. The movie is the engine these cars run on, and it never needs fuel. Now, that legend from earlier? Did a real 250 GT California appear in close-ups? You'll see it claimed all over the internet. The honest answer is that it's disputed, the kind of story that gets better every time it's told. What's documented is the three Modena cars. On Real Iron, we flag legends as legends. And this one, honestly, the movie doesn't need. Because the documented ending is better. The hero car has since been recognized as a historically significant vehicle, celebrated and displayed in Washington as a piece of American automotive culture. Let that land. A fiberglass replica, built by two guys in a suburban shop, sued by Ferrari itself, now honored alongside genuine milestones of the automobile. Not because of what's under the skin, because of what it meant on screen. 56 real 250 GT Californias, worth their millions, live mostly in climate-controlled silence. The fake got the fame, the museum lights, and the last laugh. 40 years on, the most famous Ferrari in movie history still isn't a Ferrari, and it never needed to be. So here's my question for the comments, and I actually want your answer. Same money on the table. Do you take the $337,000 engineless movie car, or a real, driver-grade classic Ferrari you can actually use? One is a car. The other is a piece of film history that happens to be car-shaped. Tell me which garage door you're opening, and defend it. If this is your kind of story, the machines behind the movies, the lawsuits, the auctions, the legends worth debunking, that's what Real Iron does every episode. Subscribe, ring the bell, and drop a comment with the next movie car you want on the lift. Because you know the drill. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. See you in the next one.